Support comes from Mosby Building Arts, a residential remodeling company guided by discipline, preparation, and attention to detail. Call Mosby.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. The Missouri Botanical Garden is giving new meaning to Wake Up and Smell the Roses. Now through March 31st, visitors can get a better sense of the scent of plants found across the garden in its exhibit, Smelling the Bouquet, Plants and Scents in the Garden at the Stephen and Peter Sachs Museum. St. Louis on the Air producer Maya Norfleet has more.
Hey, get a whiff of this. We all have a relationship with the scents around us. It's so ingrained in us that many times we don't realize how much we rely on our noses or even how much cultural relevance is behind the smells that attract or repel us. Freshly cut grass, for example, signals the arrival of spring. It can also alert folks with seasonal allergies to get their antihistamines ready. At the Missouri Botanical Garden, the entire team, from the botanist to the museum curator, are diving in nose first to make sense of our relationship with scent. Nezka Pfeifer is the curator behind the Stephen and Peter Sachs Museum exhibit, Smelling the Bouquet, Plants and Scents in the Garden. She worked with St. Louis-based perfumers Sean Marr and Weston Adam to identify and recreate the smells of the plants in her exhibit, which includes roots, grasses, and of course, flowers.
All of these are real live plants that grow in our conservatories, but they're so unique, or, they're rare. There's no way that we were ever going to be able to turn them into perfume. So that was never the goal, to destroy the plant. So, but because these smells are so interesting and different, I wanted to capture them, and thankfully the perfumers, Sean and Weston, were totally up for this challenge. And so they, as perfumers who create their own scents, they are noses. They know how to identify compounds in anything they smell. So we would go on these sniffing meetings where we would go into gardens and conservatories, on different evenings. And some of these plants would only be blooming or smelling in an evening. So it was really interesting to sort of see kind of how the day cycle is really important for smell.
Nezka and her collaborators challenged themselves to capture not just the good-smelling plants, but also the stinky ones. To do so, they applied the same methods used by perfumers. They identified the chemical makeup of a scent and recreated those compounds to make an accord. That's a blend of raw materials that mimic the original organic smell.
I really wanted a stinky plant, and Weston was up for the challenge. And so not the corpse flower, which a lot of people can come and smell at the garden when we have one of these corpse flower blooms, but in fact we have a permanent plant in the arid house, which is called a stapelia, or a carrion flower, and it has this very sort of fleshy, starfish-looking bloom. It's quite pretty.
I am going to pick it up and smell it. So this is an idea of the carrion flower? Mm-hmm. Okay. It says rotten, sweet, musky, unsettlingly meaty. And that is correct. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. It does kind of smell like the bottom of a trash can that hasn't been cleaned in a while.
That is exactly what I was that's what I asked Weston. And so what's so interesting is that there's nothing actually stinky in there. He has merged all these different compounds together and different extracts that turned it into that. That's where also the creativity of the perfumer lies. And that's the case with all of these scents.
At the Smelling the Bouquet exhibit, visitors can read descriptions of each scent and smell the accords for themselves. They're contained under small glass domes. Nezka says their goal is to show how much of our sense of smell connects us to our environment and our culture, especially through perfume. Walking through the exhibit and smelling under each dome felt like a worldwide adventure. The first stop features one of the most recognizable fragrant flowers, jasmine.
The majority of jasmine grandiflora, which is the most famous of the jasmine that gets used in perfume, is grown either in India or in Egypt. And they also use that plant culturally, for weddings or for other special occasions. But then millions of tons of blossoms that they grow, they turn into an absolute. That absolute is like a concentrate. It then gets shipped to France, to the south of France, to the perfume capital of the world, basically. And then they turned it into all of the different, they turn it into an alcohol that then can get used in perfume. So there's this really global spread of these plants, and they've been used for millennia.
The supply and demand of a scent has a direct effect on natural ecosystems, especially those that are in peril because of deforestation or overharvesting. While scents from plants like jasmine or rose are easier to obtain, there are many fragrant plants that are put in danger of extinction if people aren't careful.
A great example of that is the tree frankincense. And frankincense was one of the oldest goods that has been traded by humankind. So we're talking thousands and thousands of years. And it originates in the region that is today Oman and Yemen. Oman actually has gotten the designation by UNESCO as being like the cultural home of frankincense. It is not a tree that can be farmed. So you're basically tapping a tree that you have to cut it and the resin has to come out, and then that hardens and that becomes the incense crumbs or rocks that you then burn. But that tree, when you think about the probably thousands of cultures and then, the infrastructure that is the Catholic Church that used frankincense. Frankincense is a medicinal treatment. It's also an incense. It also can be used in perfume. But the over-harvesting and the global demand for this plant is driving it to extinction. And so one of the key messages I often have in a lot of the exhibitions I do here is how are we harming our plants that we love so much because the people are using them to such a degree that we're really testing the ability for it to remain on the planet.
When plants start to disappear from their natural environment, the entire ecosystem goes in disarray. Pollinators like bees, flies, and beetles die off, which leave other animals without a food source and other plants without pollinators. With the exhibit, Nezka also hopes to promote an understanding that plants are not scented simply for us to enjoy. The very reason plants have certain scents is for the benefit of pollinators.
If I was really going to challenge people and get them to sort of break through these molds of what a good smell is and what a bad smell is, I wanted them to understand that these plants are making these smells, but to stop centering humans in the equation. It's not about us. These are ancient relationships, right? If not millennia, there's potentially 1 million years of space and time in which these plants have been developing and existing, and they're communicating with their pollinator. So the whatever that critter is, it could be a bug, it could be a bird, it could be a bat. And sometimes that has changed based on how the environment has changed and potentially where the plant is moved or something's happened to the pollinator. So it is. Even though we are harnessing and kind of capitalizing on these smells for perfume and incense and other things, it's not about us.
That was Nezka Pfeifer, curator of the Stephen and Peter Sachs Museum at the Missouri Botanical Garden. She spoke with St. Louis on the Air producer Maya Norfleet about their current exhibit, Smelling the Bouquet, Plants and Scents in the Garden. Visitors can sniff their way through the Mobot Museum now through March 31st. Coming up, how researching plant scents is helping efforts to conserve endangered plant species. We'll meet a Missouri Botanical Garden scientist leading the charge. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.
Welcome back. I'm Elaine Cha. Take a moment to imagine your favorite flower. You can see its color, the shape and texture of its petals and its leaves, and most likely its scent. It's these very characteristics that pollinators like bees, beetles, and flies rely upon to find food sources and to support the growth and evolution of the plants around them. And while that relationship between plant and pollinator is familiar, many scientists are still learning how to understand it. Joining me in studio is one such scientist. Mónica Carlsen is a scientist at the Missouri Botanical Garden, and she will be taking her research from the garden's labs to the field in June. But she's here with us now. Mónica, welcome to St. Louis on the Air.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Let's start with the science of smell. How does smell become a language between pollinators and plants?
Is definitely what I would call an invisible language. We don't see it, but pollinators have a lot more sensors that can pick up everything that is in the air. And that is the way that plants develop, like a way of communicating with them. Getting specific chemicals to attract certain pollinators and also to repel certain ones.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the similarities and differences in how pollinators, like bees and beetles, and humans smell smells? What's the difference there?
We definitely have a suite of smells, we humans, a suite of smells that we consider unpleasant. But for the pollinators, for a fly, trash smell is very appealing, and that's what they're searching for. So our human noses are distinguishing categories in a broad, like pleasant, unpleasant. But for insects, everything is pleasant. So it's just a specific chemical that is more attractive to them, usually.
Now, I understand that plants are understudied, which the scent part of it, I'm very olfactorily motivated. Why is it that there has not been a good deal of research about this?
I think we didn't have the technology in place to first capture the scents and then isolate the compounds that make the whole floral bouquet. Technology is advancing really fast. We have more possibilities of studying them. There were studies in the 70s already of some floral scents, but they were very broad. It's like good scents, maybe some sort of chemical. But now we can go into a lot more detail with our technology advancing.
Mm-hmm. Is there an example that you can share of something that, in the 70s was not identified in a way that was clear the way that it is now?
So most of the research from the 70s was concentrated in orchids. Orchids have been a passion of growers and floral scents for a long time. And in their bouquets, they would probably name 4 or 5 compounds. Now, if we take a sample of exactly the same species, with our technology, we can identify up to 60 compounds.
Wow.
So the chemicals were there. We were just not able to identify them, especially if they were in really small concentrations in the floral bouquet.
Mm-hmm. We just learned a bit before the break about how perfumers capture smell for replication. But how do you capture the fragrance of a flower to study it? Is there an apparatus for that?
Yes. So it's actually not very sophisticated. It's a vacuum pump. We wrap the flower that we want to capture the scent with a plastic oven bag, the same one that you would use to cook turkey under Thanksgiving in an oven.
Okay.
We just suck all the air out of the bag that is surrounding the flower. And it goes through a little cartridge. That cartridge is kind of like your HEPA filter at home that attracts all the chemicals, all the impurities in the air. In our case, the impurities are the chemical compounds that make up the floral scent. So then that cartridge is sent to a lab, and in the lab, they're able to release those compounds from the HEPA filter from the cartridge and tell us which individual compounds make up that sample. It's very low tech, and that's the good thing, because it's really easy to transport into the field.
And that's what you'll be doing pretty soon. Before we leave, how you capture, do you have to pluck the flower or pick it in order to capture its smell?
No, never. So it's a totally non-destructive sampling technique. And that's what we like, because then we can come back to exactly the same plant, sometimes exactly the same flower, days or weeks later, and get another sample. Maybe sometimes the scents change throughout the lifespan of the flower or the lifespan of the plant. And we can always replicate with exactly the same thing because we haven't touched it. We haven't damaged it.
What changes the scent profile over time?
Usually it gets more of the chemicals that are involved in decaying. So just like when humans or animals decay, the profile changes. It's the same in the flower. You get more of the decaying compounds, the ones that don't smell as pleasant to us.
I'm really good at killing plants, so I think I understand what you're talking about. Now, your research, Monica, specifically looks at anthuriums, which are actually a pretty common genus of house plant here in the U.S. It's often called a flamingo flower or painter's palette. But anthuriums actually originate in Latin America. May we have you describe first what anthuriums look like?
So I tell everybody, like, if you see a flower that looks like plastic, that is not real, it has a little pencil surrounded by a big colorful leaf, that is an anthurium. You can buy them anywhere in a garden shop. And actually, Hawaii is our main export of anthuriums as potted plants and also as cut flowers. It is the top export, millions of dollar industry in Hawaii.
And it's not actually a flower.
It is not. The flowers are the tiny little dots that you see along the pencil-looking thing. Is hundreds of flowers all together in that structure.
And how did you choose anthuriums as your focus of study?
So actually came out of a conversation with my Hawaiian collaborators, the growers. They all told me nothing that is produced commercially smells, but we know that the wild species do. Do you want to smell them? And I'm like, of course. And they're like, there is one that smells like bubble gum. I'm like, no, that's not true. And they're like, yes, it is. It's right here. Smell it. And it did smell like bubble gum. So that gave me an idea. Well, are they all smelling or not? Well, I came back to St. Louis. I came back to the greenhouses at the garden. And every week I stop by the greenhouses to smell. Every single wild species of anthurium that I have it smells like something. So it's a very interesting opportunity that we know nothing about. We know anecdotes of how they smell, like bubblegum, mint, mango, but we don't have the research to back it up. That's what I came in.
Mónica Carlsen is a scientist at the Missouri Botanical Garden, and we're discussing the way that scents work. And we're actually now going to talk about some of the research that you do. So the anthuriums that are in the lab and the Climatron at Missouri Botanical Garden, what have you been able to learn from these plants so far?
So there is a huge variety of scents that we had no idea they can produce. One of my favorites in the Climatron is actually a flower of anthurium that smells like wet dog.
Okay.
Everybody can relate to that smell. That is a very particular smell.
And it's your favorite.
It is one of my favorites. And we still don't know what pollinates this plant. We have it in the Climatron. Obviously, the pollinators are nowhere around. This is endemic to Colombia. So when we go in the field in Colombia, we'll figure out what is attracted to wet dog smell.
So this work that you've been doing, what is it that you're excited to learn or discover once you are in the field in June?
So in the field, our main focus is going to be the pollinators. We can get a lot of data here in our greenhouses about the plant itself and about how it smells, but we are missing a huge component of the equation, which are the pollinators. We will only be able to do that in the field. The second thing that I'm really excited about this program is that we're bringing students from the U.S. to Colombia to train them in how to capture pollinators, do the whole pollination studies. So training the next generation of scientists is at the core of every single activity that we do at the Missouri Botanical Garden.
This is work that you have been doing for more than smells, and we've mentioned conservation. How is it that, once you understand the way that pollinators and plants communicate through smell, how will that help researchers do their work insofar as endangered flora are concerned?
So we know about 1/3 of our plants are in danger. We know nothing about the insects, about the pollinators. Very little is known about how endangered they are. If one of the two are out of the equation, the whole community starts a cascading effect of losing a pollinator species, losing a plant, losing the predator of that pollinator. So if we understand how tight that community is assembled, like all the species, all the pollinators, we can understand what will happen if one of those links disappears. So right now we're more concentrated, in terms of conservation, we're more concentrated in conserving communities and ecosystem functioning than preserving one or two species. Because we know they don't live in isolation. Right. We know they live in a community. So our efforts are understanding the community, everything in the community, so we can better preserve it.
What is challenging about that? About the community part of it?
That there are a lot of moving pieces. There are a lot of pieces that are unknown. So it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of different angles, like not just plant researchers, but also animal researchers, chemical researchers, all together to figure out how the whole community functions.
These conservation efforts, how might that affect the study that you've been doing that is specific to the smell of anthuriums? And you had mentioned that these cultivated anthuriums, they don't have a scent. How is your research going to help what is happening in the wild?
What we're hoping to, by understanding the links in the communities, will make the people around these ecosystems more aware of how a little impact can cause effects along the communities, along the wild communities. My other goal is a very, very big, ambitious goal, is that by providing wild species and their known scents to the growers, they can actually produce commercial varieties that smell. We have none of them in the market right now. And the market of floral scent is a completely open space that people have not explored in anthurium. And that would be a really good contribution for them. I would be so happy if we can actually produce a cultivated anthurium that smells, that you can have in your house.
Yeah. And you can rub your fingers and not have the wet dog, maybe. Well, that is your favorite, but other kinds too.
I would probably go for the bubble gum.
The bubble gum, right? Mónica Carlsen is a scientist at Missouri Botanical Garden. Mónica, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure.
There are plenty of smells to delight your nose at the Missouri Botanical Garden. The Orchid Show, featuring fragrant orchids, runs until March 1st, and the exhibit Smelling the Bouquet runs through March 31st. Entry to both is included with garden admission. Learn more at MissouriBotanicalGarden.org.
This episode was produced by Maya Norfleet.
Our audio engineer is Aaron Dorr. This podcast was mixed and edited by Aaron.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations, and leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thank you.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.